Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for December 2nd through the 8th. And this week we also have a lot going on, a lot to discuss. We have Mars stationing retrograde, beginning its retrograde process in Leo, and we have Mercury retrograde, which began last week rather. Mercury and the Sun are making several different aspects with Saturn and Jupiter, and this even connects in with the lunar cycle. This has been an ongoing transit, and we're going to continue to dive into it and discuss how it's continuing to elaborate and be co-created with us in this particular week. And then, of course, Venus is doing some things as well. So we're going to talk about all of that today. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a depth psychotherapist and an astrologer, and I am so excited to share the astrology of this week with you from a depth psychological perspective. So let's begin with Mars. So Mars is stationing retrograde. That means that the retrograde process is beginning. Mars will be retrograde from this Friday, December 6th, through February 23rd. So we have a good chunk of time where Mars is in this retrograde process. And retrograde is basically a fancy term for visually in the sky, the planet appears to be moving backwards in the sky from the position that it was moving. But then psychologically, what that means for us, how we derive meaning from that, there's an internalization of Mars, and there's a re-exploring of your relationship to Mars themes. And so Mars is a symbol of our physicality, our action, our decisiveness, our assertiveness. It is, I find it also to be a symbol of ambition, risk-taking, boundaries, how, when, if we say no. And it's also a symbol of courage, confidence, fear, and also exercise and movement, like the physical movements that we take in our capacity to do that. So there's this external component of Mars, which is more about the physicality, the sports-like phenomenon of Mars. And then there's the more psychological, which is around being direct, being assertive, experiencing states of fear and courage, often in tandem with one another. And then also our ability to have boundaries, to say no, to protect ourselves. Mars is really a symbol of protection and advocation. And so this week, also I want to say, Mars begins the retrograde process, and we have this whole couple of months process. We have essentially most of December, January, and then a big chunk of February where we're experiencing and working through these themes. And so there is no rush to have it all figured out as far as what this may mean from you. I think that many times, especially when we're talking about a retrograde, it's about living into and feeling into and having a co-participation experience with the astrology in your life, with the experience of the world, with the experience of psyche. And so this is why astrology is cool, is because we can get to kind of feel into what may arise, and also we have to experience it as well. So so this is the beginning of entering into re-exploring how these Mars themes, physicality, assertiveness, courage, saying no, how you experience that, how it shows up for you, and the ways that things around those topics may be changing for you. Now, I think that we can also look at this as the areas of your life might be energized. I find that Mars tends to have an energizing effect. It tends to symbolize when and where we get like passionate inspired, we have enthusiasm, we want to do something, we want to take action. I think it can also symbolize where I'm also thinking how sometimes Mars transits can, at a more practical or mundane level, they can correlate to experiences where we have a something that happens that shows where a boundary or a removal, a no happens, and so that can be sometimes via like something physically that happens with the body, where you know our body requires us to rest. Our body requires us to protect ourselves. And so I think this is all, it's all grist for the mill. It's all something to look at. What's happening in your life? And how is Mars energy being internalized and being remade in you? I think that retrogrades are so much about introspection and this process of evaluation and re-experiencing or reimagining how this planetary archetypal energy is showing up for you via your experience, your inner experience, and then also your external life situations. And I'll also say that regardless of how this is happening for you or where it's happening in your chart, this is always with the astrology, we're experiencing it collectively. So you may see, and I think this is important to pay attention to because it helps us have more empathy and understanding about people in our lives. We can also look and see, like, how may Mars retrograde be showing up for other people in your life, for your loved ones, friends, families, coworker, etc. And I think this can also help to understand your relationship to Mars themes as well, because a lot of these things involve interacting with other people. Okay, so the other, and we'll continue to talk about this Mars retrograde over time. So this is really just the broad strokes and sort of beginning to feel into this transit. So I'll also say that this is happening in Leo and Cancer. So the Mars retrograde begins at 6 degrees of Leo. And then Mars will continue to back up into Cancer, and it will make its way all the way to 17 degrees of Cancer before it stations direct and then moves forward again. So this is also important if you have a practice of working with your own birth chart, or even if you're curious about this, if you're curious about learning more about astrology, you can look at the house in your birth chart that is occupied by Leo and Cancer. And those two houses, whatever areas of life they symbolize, each house symbolizes an area of life. Those houses are going to be, those areas of life are probably going to be energized in some way. There's a very Mars kind of focus. There's a focus around assertiveness, action, ambition, physicality, and exerting boundaries as well, exerting no's. So I think that it can show up in these ways where we can look at the houses where Mars is transiting. And then also, ideally we want to look at the whole chart because the whole chart is a system. It doesn't have to be just confined to these particular houses, these particular areas of life. Sometimes it can be more global. It really depends. And I think it also really depends on your starting point right now. Like, what is your comfortability with being direct? What is your experience of fear? I think especially, what is your experience of saying no and deciding to, how do you advocate for yourself or for others? How do you protect yourselves? How do you protect yourself or others? Those kinds of things. Like, how does that actually work for you right now in your life? And that is the foundation from which Mars retrograde has to work from in your life right now. Okay, so another part of what's happening this week is really focused with the Sun and Mercury. So we're still firmly in Sagittarius season. Happy birthday to my Sagittarius people. And we have the Sun in Sagittarius, and then we have Mercury there as well in Sagittarius. So if you remember, and you can listen back to last week's forecast, last week we had a new moon in Sagittarius, and that same week, Mercury stationed retrograde in Sagittarius. So a lot of energy there around new beginnings, and then also beginning to reevaluate or rethink or review things. And this particular week, the Sun and Mercury are conjunct, which means that they're occupying the same degree in the zodiac. They're basically like as close together in the chart, in the zodiac, as they can be. And this is a special moment in astrology because this is really a merging, a melding of energies together. And this can happen with any planet, but especially it happens during the midpoint of Mercury retrograde's process. And so, so there's this theme this week with the Sun and Mercury coming together around insight, renewal, especially like mental insight, like things around your logical mind being renewed, having new ideas, having like this sense of clarity, especially around something that you've been chewing on or something that you've been trying to work on or improve or reflect on in general. I think with the Sun Mercury, there can be kind of a sense of integration, and it tends to be, this is very, it can be external, I suppose, but I think I tend to see it as more of an internal process, something that makes sense for you internally. And this happens, so this is in this entire week, and it happens exactly on Thursday, the 5th of December. So Thursday, I think, is especially a day to watch for synchronistic events or omens or dreams. You can even decide to do a divination on this particular day if there's something that you want answers to. But I think in general, there's a sort of synchronistic component to this particular transit. So that happens this week, Mercury and the Sun together. And so Mercury, again, is still in its retrograde, reviewy, introspective, like mentally introspective sort of focus. And these two, the Sun and Mercury, are still connecting in with Saturn and Jupiter. And so this we've been experiencing the Jupiter-Saturn square all year, and I've talked about that a little bit. So this is around themes in 2024 of grappling with expansion and contraction, wanting to grow, but then also meeting the limitations that refine the sense of growth or frustrate the sense of growth, and how we navigate those two. So that's sort of been happening in the background. That's like the landscape. I think the background image of what we've been experiencing this year, a component of it at least. And then when the Sun and Mercury come into Sagittarius, they're automatically aspecting both Jupiter and Saturn. And so there's this intensification or this like this what's the word that I want to use here? I don't know if agitation is quite right, but it's kind of like there's a tension. This like they're not really in conflict, but they're kind of like it's like they want the same things, Jupiter and Saturn, I think, but they go about it in different ways. They both want a sense of experience and wisdom and growth. And I'm talking about the planets what they want as if they are beings. And I think depending on your belief system, that may be the case for you. But I'm sort of personalizing them in this way. We don't have to say that they want anything, but they're channels for moving towards growth and accomplishment and gaining a sense of experience and wisdom. And Jupiter goes about this via wanting to like really do everything, learn everything. Jupiter is very expansive and inclusive in this way. Jupiter is like, yes, more, please. Like, add in everything. And this is fantastic for like really feeding the sense of imagination and exploration and inspiration. And also, it can sometimes feel like too much. There can be a too muchness to Jupiter. And I think we really can have a potential for that experience within this week when we have the Sun and Mercury opposite Jupiter. There can be with Jupiter a sense of helpful hope and optimism and imagination and vision. And also, that can get distorted into having hope or optimism that maybe is less grounded or less rooted, or yeah, doesn't have like a secure foundation. And so I think in this way, though there's a sense of tension with Jupiter Saturn, I think that Saturn has a lot to offer Jupiter and vice versa, because Saturn is about growth through experiences that we have day after day, little bit by little bit, and the broad arc of improvement and maturation that happens in a slow and sustainable and contained way. Saturn is really so much about routine and ritual and devotion, and and Saturn reminds us that we have limitation, that there's a finite amount of things that we can do, especially if there is a big overarching goal or project or mission around something. And so Saturn can come in and sort of like bring a steady container or foundation to Jupiter matters. And also, you know, Saturn in a distorted way can be excessive restriction, where like the containment that feels safe and holding, if it's too restrictive or too tight, or if it gets again just sort of distorted, it can become where it feels oppressive, or where it feels heavy, or critical even. And so these are all themes that are again being even more highlighted this week, in particular when we have the Sun and Mercury making a square to Saturn this week. And so a lot of this really involves our insight and awareness and ideas and belief systems, because these things are very connected to the Sun and to Mercury. The Sun and Mercury are both very connected to our conscious mind, what we're aware of, our insights, our ideas about things, and the our way of structuring a cohesive sense of self, Sun, and our way of structuring a sense of reality. This is really connected in with the Sun and Mercury. And so I think this week in particular, there's a lot of potential for having a sense of new insights, new awarenesses, renewals, and maybe it's also things that are continuing to get fleshed out in your consciousness, in your mind. Maybe some things that started to emerge for you around the new moon last week. Maybe these things continue to elaborate. And I'm saying that because this these aspects also connect into the lunar cycle and its current state this particular week. So, and I know this is maybe a lot of info, so you just, let it wash over. If it doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. So whatever you need, whatever is going to sit with you is going to stick either now or at some point in time. It's getting in there somehow. So this week within the lunar cycle, we have our first quarter moon in the sign of Pisces, and this is happening on Sunday, the 8th of December. And so this is one of the first core moments in the lunar cycle following the new moon. The first quarter moon that we're having this week, that point tends to be a time where we can start to see a bit about what is emerging, whatever was initiated or is like this new beginning, whatever it is, no matter how subtle or not so subtle, it's starting to take shape, it's starting to take form. I think that we can also think of this point in the lunar cycle as when we have some decisions to make, and where maybe we feel compelled, or maybe there's feedback that we want to do something with. That can happen around this time. And this is connecting in because this is the moon in Pisces being with Saturn in Pisces. And so this just, again, really amplifies and brings more attention, brings more volume into these aspects with the Sun and Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. And so I think this week is a time to ask what is what is actually happening here, to really pay attention to the feedback that you're getting from your own internal experience, how things are striking you, what is happening in your life, and if there's anything that you want to do about that. And I think that particularly because this is the first quarter moon in the sign of Pisces, which is inherently about the intuitive feeling function. And we're also in Mercury retrograde, which is more introspective. And we're also beginning Mars retrograde, which is this, again, more introspective experience of Mars. I think that this week is really about being with and trying to tune in and hone in on what actually is right now. And that's like the first step in deciding how you want to move forward in your life, or how you want to, if you do want to take actions or make changes, or if you need to do any of those things. I think that this is really about, this week is about being with what is, and like being with what is externally as well as internally. That feels really important this week in particular. So yeah, this whole combo of, and this is all immutable energy. So we have Sagittarius, Sun and Mercury in Sagittarius, we have Jupiter in Gemini, and we have Saturn and the moon in the sign of Pisces. We're missing Virgo, but still, that's a lot that's going on. And so this whole combo, I think there's so much here for you to experience both a sense of growth and hope and optimism and vision, imagination in your life. And then also my hope for you, I think, is to find a way to experience the sense of insight as well as containment, and the vision as well as the practicality. I think those are the themes that are getting woven in here, and it feels like a nice balance. And sometimes it can kind of feel like those things are in conflict with one another. And so what we can do with that is to feel what we're feeling and to hold space for simultaneously seemingly conflicting feelings or desires. And and know that at some point when we're ideally when we're like creating space for and allowing and validating all of these parts of ourselves, there is a sense of cohesion or integration that can happen by the nature of not trying to deny anything, by allowing everything to exist in your psyche. Okay, so that's what I have to say about those particular planets. Let's talk about Venus for a moment. So Venus is in the sign of Capricorn still this week. It's going to move into Aquarius. But before it does that, Venus in Capricorn will make a helpful, easy aspect with Uranus. Venus will make a trine to Uranus in Taurus. And I really love this aspect because it's inherently creative and can have a sense of novelty to it. There's like this unexpected or innovative or unconventional kind of theme to it, especially around Venusian topics of relationships, beauty, aesthetics, creativity, healing. And so this is like a really easy, I don't know if I want to say easy. I don't like that word very much. There's like an effortlessness to it. And so the correlation to trines like this is that they don't really require anything of us. There's not like a confrontational kind of effect to it, but there is a sense of support and resource to it. So I think that we can think of Venus trine Uranus this week as themes around creativity and synchronistic events. And so this might be a week where you want to tap into your creative sense, or where you want to do some creative exploration around something, especially around something that involves relationships or beauty or aesthetics, those kinds of things. I think Venus Uranus making a trine this week can really be a helpful resource with some of this more tense energy that we may be feeling. Now, on the 6th, on Friday the 6th, Venus will move into Aquarius. And Venus will be there for about a month from December 6th through January 2nd. And so this is a shift from Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn tends to be a relational focus more around practical security, practical things, commitments, agreements, things like that. Venus moving into Aquarius, Aquarius is more about reinvention, reimagination, authenticity, and autonomy. And so there's this shift in focus around relationships to those themes. And also, I think more importantly, is that when Venus moves into Aquarius, it will be conjunct with Pluto. And Venus conjunct Pluto is a very specific kind of energy. Pluto is a symbol of the unseen, the unconscious, intense experiences, the life, death, rebirth process, working with anything that involves the hidden or the taboo or the denied or the marginalized in some way. And so Venus coming into aspect with Pluto in this way, there's, and this happens again on Friday the 6th. So I think, I think there's a very different tone from Monday through Thursday versus Friday into the weekend. Because Venus with Pluto, there's an intensity of experiences, especially around relationships or beauty or aesthetics, or Venus is also a symbol of femininity or feminine experiences or feminine issues in any way. And Venus is also really connected in with healing as well. And so I think that Venus moving into this position with Pluto, there's correlations around relational healing, around connecting with the unseen, connecting with the unconscious or the unknown, or sitting with the unknown. And this may have a relational effect in that it may involve other people in your life, or it may be a more internal experience of how you are in relationships. I think that Pluto is also very connected to our intuitive or psychic sort of senses. And so it may be more about your intuitive experiences or your healing process. So again, it might be more internal, it might be more personal, something that you experience within yourself. It may involve experiences more literally with other people. I don't know. I think it depends on, what's happening in your life. And also, I want to say this too. Uh, things things don't tend to happen in a vacuum. There's kind of this like whatever is happening now, there are things that have led up to this experience now, and this experience now is informing what may happen in the future. And so I think that we can look at astrology in this way, is that um, Venus and Pluto together at that moment, whatever we could think of Venus Pluto as this moment of something unconscious emerges, or something unseen or unknown becomes known, because Pluto is like the reservoir, the container of the unknown or the unseen or the unconscious. And when a planet comes to Pluto, it's like, hey, I want to draw some stuff out of that reservoir. In this case, it's Venus, which is the material is going to be relational, uh, beauty, aesthetics, feminine in nature. And so that doesn't, in my experience at least, that does not just come like, whoa, I did not expect this. I mean, I think we can experience it that way. And also, there are things in your life that have been leading up to that moment. And so I think that we can also think of Venus Pluto this week as a symbol of whatever it is that's been sort of percolating around in your unconscious, that is ready to be seen or known or felt. It's like it's already kind of like moving around here in the underground, in the underworld, and it's like ready to be seen, or to emerge in your psyche or in your relationships. And so um, I say that because I think that when we talk about Pluto or Saturn or Mars, or like a lot of the astrology, there can be a feeling of fear or trepidation. And I think that is like me too, same. I think that's very normal. And so I think, though, to think about it as the astrology is just signifying events that like are in progress, that are like already um, percolating. I think that helps to kind of like reduce the sense of fear and powerlessness about it. And at its core, Pluto really is a symbol of healing. It's also a symbol of the life, death, rebirth process. And it's a symbol of how psychologically there are things that over the lifetime that become worn and then are ready to compost or decompose in some way. And then there is new life that emerges from that. And often there's a sense of renewal or vitality. And also, this has actually been coming up a lot in my practice, both in client sessions and in some of my groups is that especially with Pluto, I think that when we're in that transit, when we're in that experience, it's not always clear exactly it's not always clear exactly what is happening. It's kind of like you're in the chrysalis. And once you get some space from that transit, then it's a little more clear of exactly what was happening in that moment. But when you're in it, you're experiencing it. And I think this is especially so with Pluto because there is this intensity of experience with it, and because it's so correlated to a rebirth experience, a transformation experience. And so I think really working with this energy in particular, it's helpful to ask, well, actually, two different things come to mind. It's helpful to find a sense of regulation within yourself, to tend to um, your needs, your nervous system, both proactively and in the moment. Do the things that you need to do in order to feel like you feel grounded, you feel secure, you feel safe, you feel good, whatever that is for you. Physical, somatic, body movements, eating good food, taking a nice, lovely shower, whatever it is, those things. And also, having a curious, open mind, like a very like soft, curious wondering around what is happening for you, especially when you feel like a strong emotional response to something, especially if it involves relationships. Okay, so let's pull some tarot. And I will say also along these lines, I think this, especially with Venus Pluto, I'm really I'm really interested in this planet as well, or this transit as well, because it is happening when I am offering a workshop on astrology and depth psychology this month. And so excited to be able to offer this workshop in person in San Diego as well as online. It's being hosted by the San Diego Astrological Society, and the topic, let's see if I can remember the actual title, is Challenging Astrology, Moving from Hardship to Healing Through Depth Psychology. And so it's essentially a crash course in a depth psychological perspective, what depth psychology even is, and how to look at astrology through a depth psychological perspective. And what's really cool is I'm going to be taking volunteers from the workshop, and we're going to be looking at your astrology in real time to see how we can look at astrology from this trauma-informed, depth perceptive, working with the unconscious lens, and especially challenging astrology, things like Venus Pluto or things like Saturn transits or anything else. And so this will be working with natal birth chart aspects, with transits, whatever it is that you have going on. And so that is happening on Friday, the 13th of December. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll have more info on my website and a link below where you can find out more info on that. If you are local, would absolutely love to see you, love to have you there. And if you're not, you can join via the Zoom realms. Okay, so let's do some tarot. So I'm shuffling the deck here, and I invite you, as always, to turn your attention inward in whatever way is most effective for you. You can find a sense of stillness, you can find a sense of organic movement. You may wish to close your eyes or to focus on something in front of you. And as you're in this place, allow any sensory experiences to flow through you. So the sounds that you hear around you, allow them to filter through you and flow through you. The temperature in the room and the sensation of your clothes, allow all of those things to just filter through and to further refine your sense of presence here. Imagine yourself encircled within a beautiful sphere of light. And this light bubble can be any color that feels right for you at this particular moment. Now is a beautiful time to invite in your spiritual guidance team, your ancestors, angels, whatever your name or experience of the divine is, or something greater, benevolent, protective force. Ask that they're here with you now to protect you, to guide you, and to communicate with you in a way that you can easily understand right now. And maybe a wondering or a question arises in your awareness. Hold it gently. And if there is a card between 1 and 3 that strikes you, you can hold that in your awareness, and that card will be special to you. Okay. So the first card is the 5 of Swords. And this card I find to have kind of like a feisty sort of effect, or feisty sort of connotation. It sort of reminds me of Mars, actually. So this card is a symbol of conflict, agitation, frustration, and that like there's also this like wanting to be right, wanting to have things work out in the way where like yeah, there's definitely some like angstiness about this card. And so as I'm reading this, this might be an inner experience that you're having. This might be an external experience. Maybe there's a conflict with a person or people or situation. Um, I'm always inclined, even if there is a conflict that you're having, I'm always inclined to read this more psychologically, and that there's something internally that is like an agitator. And so I actually want in this moment to read this as this spread as a symbol of Mars retrograde. And so like this 5 of Swords is a symbol of the way that you may experience Mars, and that there might be, yeah, like some agitation, some frustration. I think, though, that, and the image in this card is there's this person who's like, they're flying on a broomstick, and they have all these swords that they're kind of like, there's like too many for them to hold, is kind of like they're carrying 3, and then the other 2 are in the sky. One of the 2 is pointing down, the other of the 2 is pointing up. And this to me feels like the sense of wanting to protect or defend or advocate or fight for something, and it's like there's too many things to hold here. And so what's the priority? I think is what I'm wondering here. And I think that this card also asks, this card also asks us, the Five of Swords asks us to decide what we really want out of a scenario. Like, what is our end goal? And it asks us to prioritize, or at least keep in mind, relationship. And that there might be something that we want to do or that we could do now that might be satisfying, but it may have an effect or an impact in the long term that we don't really want. And I think that this card represents this conundrum and the grappling with that issue of like, how do we do what we want or need to do now while also keeping in mind our overarching intention, our wider goals. And I think that this is a part of the Mars retrograde process is, and I think some of the complications around I'm thinking about saying no and setting boundaries and how some of those things can be difficult, or how even like saying no, especially in a circumstance where you usually don't have a boundary or you don't say no. And then if you start having boundaries for yourself in a different way, that can cause conflict because it is different. It's different for you, it's different for the other people in your life. And so I think this card sort of holds all of the experiences of agitation or conflict, both short term and long term, and it asks us to keep in mind what it is that we really want and what it is that's really important to us, and to have like a sense of the wider perspective. Now, the second card is the High Priestess, and this feels like a really beautiful movement into the Mars retrograde process. The High Priestess is a symbol of working with the unknown. It's a symbol of working with your intuitive feeling function. And in this, the image in this card, there's this person who is sitting, it almost looks like they're sitting out on a rooftop. They've just crawled out their window and they're like looking sort of longingly up at the sky, and there's these beautiful pomegranate stars that are up in the sky, and the moon is there. And they have this really cool gray flowing dress and a very long, also long hat, like a pointy hat kind of situation. And so they're really just gazing out at the unknown, out at the stars. And the High Priestess is a symbol of connecting with the unknown. And it's a reminder that there are things that we don't know, that we don't even know, and that there's so much value and wisdom and experience to gain through seeking the mysterious and through curiosity and through this part of our consciousness that does not even have words for an experience. And so this is such like a introspective, internal, contemplative card. And so if this was your card in particular, I think there's such a theme here around your intuition, around your knowingness, around your seeingness, like you're seeing with your symbolic eyes, and an encouragement to do that, and to that like this is not like a I'm gonna figure it out and have all of the practical answers. Like this is anything but that. This is really asking you to to sit with the unknowing. And I really feel the Pluto symbolism around the high priestess. High priestess is also this threshold energy, or this marker sort of energy, and I feel that um, around the Five of Swords being this sort of like grappling with something or having a conflict around something, and then the High Priestess being the next card. You're sitting with what it is that you don't know about the situation and wondering what may be about it. And then the third card is the Three of Pentacles. And this card is really adorable. It looks like it's in a kitchen or a workspace, and there's all these little bottles and potions and a big giant kettle that's about to overflow. And then there's what look like three young people that are sort of like peeking behind the curtain. Um, they look like they might have been doing something mischievous. I'm not quite sure. Um, so this card tends to be about collaborative projects. I think also to look at this more psychologically, it's about things coming to work together, things coming into cohesion together, and that this image in this particular deck is this like boiling pot. It's kind of like there's all of these things that go into this stew or this brew that make um, the brew become something special and unique and distinct. It becomes greater. What is that saying? The whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts, and that there's all of these different components that come together to support each other. And so that may be people coming together in your life, that there's a collaborative project or there's a collaborative something that's happening. There is a cooperativeness about it. And it also may be, I think, too, to think about this more in an inward kind of way, that this conflict and then contemplation allows for things to come together and allows you to have a sense of cohesion or integration or wholeness, or to allow things to manifest, if I can use that word, more creatively or more literally in your life. That it's kind of like, I feel like the Five of Swords is like you're working out some stuff. You're kind of like trying to figure things out, and there's like a either an uneasiness or a not sureness. And then the High Priestess is like, okay, let's just like really sit with it, and let's I think of the High Priestess as like looking into the water and just like noticing what comes to your mind, noticing like okay, yeah. So uh have you ever been doing something very mundane, like taking a shower or washing the dishes or going on a walk, and you're like not thinking about anything, you're just like doing the thing, and then you have this idea or you have a memory, like maybe you're doing the dishes and then you remember the thing that you were trying to remember, or you have this like idea and you're like, oh my gosh, of course, like why have I not thought of that before? um, that's the kind of feeling tone that I get from the High Priestess in this position. It's like there's a thing that you're trying to work out, and the High Priestess is like, don't this is going to sound weird, but like don't try to figure it out. Just be with yourself. And I know, like, you got to do what you got to do. So we can't always just like sit and meditate and be zen and whatever. That's not always practical or desirable. And the High Priestess is like saying that there's something that's cooking or percolating. I'm really into that word today, percolating. There's something percolating around in your unconscious that will emerge. And the way to access that or to help it along is to use more intuitive, feeling, or non-linear ways of thinking. And so it may make sense for you to go for a walk, take a shower, wash the dishes, meditate, do your mindfulness, whatever it is. That may make sense. And then from that, there is something that clicks, that comes together, that bubbles over into your awareness. And I really feel the three of Pentacles, that around the Sun Mercury conjunction and the sense of insight and renewal. All right, that is your weekly astrology forecast for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, would absolutely love to see you at my workshop on astrology and depth psychology this December 13th. And yeah, wishing you a super easeful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.